Chicago State University, CSU, yesterday on the order of Judge Nancy Maldonado of United States District Court of Illinois, released the academic records of President Bola Tinubu in its custody. Although the institution failed to produce an original copy of Tinubu's 1979 certificate, in its response to request number 2, and I quote, CSU does not in the ordinary course keep copies of students' diploma and after diligent search cannot locate a copy of the original diploma it prepared for Mr. Tinubu in 1979, hence has no document responsive to this request, end of quote. The release document stated. But the university was able to produce diploma certificates of other graduates not requested by Atiku. The release document, as suspected by former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, exposed variations in signatories and logo, as well as revealing the fact that the president attended the university after he graduated from Government College, Lagos in 1970. Maldonado had, in a ruling, ordered CSU to make all requested documents available before the court by noon yesterday, Chicago time. The released documents contained 32 documents. Tinubu's primary and secondary education, like his university, had remained subject of major controversy. Besides, the variations in the names of signatories in the certificate and number of persons who signed various certificates issued in 1979, there was also a huge variation in the logo of the institution.
Okay, so finally they've released the certificate, but I think it's also incumbent on us to wait for depositions today.
Yeah.
To be able to see how the deposition process go. And like a lot of people had touted before, there were cases of variations, as regards logo of the certificate. And I'm sure the both legal teams will be able to fashion out their interpretations to all of this released. There were also cases of variations, and when you check the documents further, there was also a case as regards the school attended.
Yes. Government
College, Lagos, said it finished in 1970, but there's also been facts and checks that indicates that Government College didn't start up until 74, and I think their first set came out in 79, 80, thereabouts. So, there are also many variations. On the Southwest College form that was released, there was female indicated there with a social security number. We've not been able to independently verify the social security number. And there are many other variations across board. So at least we have a slant to where we are. Looking forward to the depositions. I think the deposition this afternoon will give a force to all of this document and the lawyers will be able to interrogate. So like I said before, yes, a lot of people have said it's not going to go within the stipulated time. You can't file fresh evidence at the Supreme Court. Let's see how that legal process pans out. But for me, what I've always reiterated is the morality of the issue. The fact that it shouldn't be a big deal for somebody that is serving the highest office in the country to be able to allow the certificates to be released. It's not a big deal because there's a level of integrity. And for those that say, yes, make the argument, morality is not law, I just hope they can stand a highly immoral society when it starts to hit them. Because an highly immoral society is a reflection of a society where there's a complete breakdown of law of honor, order. And when there's a complete breakdown of law and order, anything can happen. In the words of Donald Trump, I can shoot somebody down on Fifth Avenue and nothing will happen. So that means people can commit egregious crimes. And that's not the kind of society we want. So we still need to make that argument for morality, as people also make the argument for legalese. And it also has to be said, the school talked about the fact that they cannot locate the certificate. I've been able to ask around. Normally what is said is that once one certificate is issued and that's just it, and that what you will get afterwards if you lose it is a replacement certificate. And that's what Mr. Tinubu claimed in his deposition to INEC, that he swore under oath. But all of these are interesting times for Nigeria. So there are more questions that will be asked. Why the female there? He's argued that it was clerical error. Whose social security number is that? There's more investigation that needs to be made. Why the discrepancies and the variations in the paper put forward? One thing is certain, this conundrum will continue for a while until we are able to get logical conclusion by both legal team, making due interpretations. But we must have a society where everything is laid bare on the table.
Okay, let me start with this. I've been making the argument here that emotions and morality have no place in law. It is what they teach 100 level law students when they teach introduction to law or they teach legal methods. Your teachers will warn you, don't come and write literature here. The law is what it is. So lawyers don't moralize. They follow the rules, they follow the principles, they follow substantive law. And if you are in court, you follow procedural law. But substantive law is superior in most instances to procedural law. These are basic principles that any elementary student of law will understand. However, there's a principle called open justice. The principle of open justice, in the explanations, in the literature, says that, look, for you to have justice, yes, you can, pay attention within the open forum to personal opinions of people. And that is why you have this justification. Everybody is now, commenting on different aspects of it. Because what is the purpose of the law? The purpose of the law is to modulate society and to, ensure the progress of society under the rule of law, so that you don't have a Hobbesian system. So that participation, that's why people can review cases, review statements from the court of law. However, let's come to the substantive matter. Now, the discovery for use that Waziri Atiku Abubakar and the PDP embarked upon in the United States. Yes, yesterday, the CSU, Chicago State University, has now complied with the ruling of the courts of justice, Judge Gilbert and Judge Nancy Maldonado, and has met the deadline. Now, a 32-page document is out there from the school. Now, on request number 2, which is that the original certificate should be provided, the university stated that they have no access to that original certificate. Now, you cannot give what you don't have. If a student graduates, you give him a diploma and he goes away with it. There's no way you can have the original. So that's just simple common sense. Now, the person involved now says, okay, there was a fire incident, he lost his documents and all that. So he asked for a replacement certificate. Most people will tell you, please make sure you don't lose your certificate. It's always not very easy to get a replacement copy. When we were leaving that program in Oxford, they told you, please, we don't replace certificates. Keep your certificate very well. The best you can get, if it's an examination program, is to get your transcript. So all those documents that have now been provided, I've seen quite a number of commentaries, front page of This Day Today, drawing attention to certain discrepancies. A piece by Farouk Berogi also drawing attention to certain discrepancies about gender, about qualifications for admission, and all of that. Okay, the question therefore is, are there smoking guns in what the Chicago State University has released? We cannot sit here and declare that there are smoking guns without a proper perusal, examination, of what has been provided. The only caveat to that is that the same Chicago State University said certain discrepancies that have been observed were as a result of clerical error. But there will be a deposition today by a CSU designee who is going to appear before the court and defend some of these issues, I guess under interrogation. And, many of these issues will come up and we'll probably have more clarity. Now, the second point is that even if there are smoking guns, of what weight, of what relevance would all of this be before the Supreme Court of Nigeria? Imagining that the team, the Atiku Abubakar team, continues to quote Order 2 of the Supreme Court rules. The question would then be, the second question, beyond the smoking gun issue, would be, can the order of court, which is procedural, can it be superior to what substantive law says, particularly in the Electoral Act, and also, in the Constitution itself, which I tried to explain yesterday about the efflution of time. Number 3 point, beyond these two that I have made, is that, look, I still stand by the point that, look, at the end of the day, all of this may serve no purpose other than the fact that the Atiku camp has been able to go on a discovery, on a voyage of discovery, and has brought up these issues that people are playing up within the public domain, okay? For basic reasons. This whole point about, open justice, the public interest, the interest of the electorate, and all of that, beyond legalism, as Osita Chidoka has argued in another issue. And I go to the point raised by Osita Chidoka. Osita Chidoka raised the point about the value of our institutions. Why is it that to authenticate, to find little details about somebody's qualification, we have to be relying on a foreign jurisdiction to embark on a discovery for use? After all, when you apply for a position, you fill for a form, right? And you even go for security screening. They tell you that the security agencies have looked at your documents. Now, this is a comment on the value of our own institutions. And they've been at it. So they are ineffectual. And I think that point is a moot point. Another point that Osita Chidoka raised is that, look, for future purposes, we will have to resolve all these issues about qualification, about age, and all of that before anybody is sworn in. And that's why I keep saying, I hope some people are taking notes and trying to see what can we learn from all of this. The number 5 point, I think I've reached number 5 point that I would like to make, is that, okay, all of a sudden, I even find all of this very suspicious. Where all of us are running after a certificate, which grade, which this, and all of that. Major issues of the day have been abandoned. The naira to the dollar now is over 1,000 naira. Many parents are already withdrawing their students from schools abroad. There is a strike that Labour promised that has not happened. We've now been told that we should wait while we continue to deal with the crisis that we're talking about. Even the issue about Mohbad, that everybody, including superstars in Nollywood and elsewhere, got involved in. Nobody is talking about Mohbad now. Everybody is looking for Tinubu certificate. Tinubu certificate. It's a comment on the state of our nation. That sometimes we get distracted. We don't focus on the big issues. We don't, concentrate on things that matter altogether. I'm not saying one should be to the exclusion of the other. I'm not saying one should be to the exclusion of the other. But we seem to be dropping our eyes. We seem to be taking our eyes off the ball. These are the issues. Maybe in 2027, when President Tinubu says he wants a second term, if these issues do not go away, in 2027, right? That's the next election, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, these issues will again surface. And one way or the other, we will need to reform the electoral process. We will need to take a second look at the electoral framework on some of the lessons that we have so far extrapolated from this. But, all the other issues about what could likely happen at the Apex Court, I've outlined them. And those going about order 2 of the Supreme Court, no, substantive law will probably override procedural law at the end of the day.
All right, just a few comments with regards to this particular matter. One of the things I must say is that even going from the fact that the judge gave an order, 12 noon yesterday, Chicago time, CSU must release the records, and was obeyed. It's small but significant. I say this because Dr. Batiyo talked about the fact that institutions in other parts of the world, at least in countries like the United States of America, are strengthened such that when the rule of law is obeyed. We have many orders by different courts in Nigeria, even at presidential level, where an order is given and it is dishonored or disrespected based on the will of the person who is in charge then. We even had a recent case in court where 2 agencies, security agencies, came to fisticuffs, almost fisticuffs, over the former CBN immediate past CBN governor. And so there are questions around that, and that's why sometimes people feel more confident in courts outside the shores of Nigeria. That speaks very powerfully, and it talks about the fact that if we must build a nation that will survive, we must build our institutions, especially the judiciary. It's been said, that phrase has been trending, all eyes on the judiciary, all eyes on the judiciary. we must build our institutions. We must have confidence and faith in institutions, and we must obey the rule of law, which I emphasize again, this particular administration has said they were going to adhere to. I just wanted to point that out because it was refreshing to see that an order is made by a court, and it is almost unheard of, or it's almost unthinkable to imagine that it would not be followed. That's on one hand. Now, with regards to the other matters as to the discoveries that have been made, some of the questions that come out for me would be, yes, there are some discrepancies, especially in the process to getting President Bola Tinubu into university. But will that count? Because I believe the issue on ground is a certificate that he submitted to INEC, and that is the diploma he got from CSU, which to a very large extent has been authenticated by the university. However, we must wait for the depositions today to see perhaps the questions that CSU has to answer. The questions around the logo, the questions around the signatories and signature, the questions around, the certificates by other students, but not this particular certificate. So a few other things. So this matter is not by any means, has not by any means come to an end. There are still questions. It opens even more, and then the real work can begin. Now, the question as to whether it will be admitted in the Supreme Court has been argued a number of times. But I think beyond the ruling of the courts, yes, law is not morality. However, it speaks greatly of the kind of nation that we're building. And as we're in the conversation yesterday, we're talking about the fact that it also speaks to what the younger generation have to look forward to. I had cited the example of the JAM, fiasco, and the fact that we want to build a nation that is credible. The president has done a lot when it comes to foreign policy. In fact, he's said to be one of the most traveled presidents in the first 100 days in office. If we're going to be pushing out and promoting the image of the nation, we must start first of all by putting a stance that, number one, we're a credible nation. The leaders who are in power are credible and are there through a credible process, certificates, everything authenticated. And then, of course, that corruption is being deliberately and obviously being fought against. These are some of the issues that we must look beyond just a court ruling, is the state of the nation, so that we do not become a laughing stock on the international scene. We keep talking about us, Nigeria being the giant of Africa. And in all ramifications, in all areas, we must be. And so, beyond election matters is also the credibility of the nation and the seat of the presidency. A former Nigerian oil minister and president of the oil cartel OPEC has been granted bail after appearing in a London court. The Ezani Alison Madueke is charged with bribery offenses in exchange for multi-million-dollar oil and gas contracts. She served as president of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, and was a crucial figure in the Nigerian government of Goodluck Jonathan between 2010 and 2015. She denies all the charges. Yesterday, Arise News chief correspondent John Cookson was outside the court from where he sent this report.
She was once one of Africa's most prominent politicians, a former president of the global oil cartel OPEC, the first female to hold the post. Today's London court appearance by Alison Madueke follows years of investigations by Britain's National Crime Agency and Nigeria's Anti-Graft Commission, the EFCC. A Nigerian court has already recovered $21 million from bank accounts Alison Madueke held in Nigeria, and both the EFCC and the US Department of Justice have seized properties worth almost $100 million, allegedly purchased with the proceeds of corruption. Evidence in this case is expected to shed further light on alleged corrupt practices endemic to Nigeria's oil industry over a period of 5 years. And the crux of this case, Britain's National Crime Agency alleges Alison Madueke accepted bribes during her time as Minister for Petroleum Resources in exchange for awarding multi-million-dollar oil and gas contracts. Mrs. Alison Madueke was charged with 6 counts of bribery, including accepting £125,000 in cash, having access to numerous London properties, accepting gifts from high-end firms like Cartier and Louis Vuitton, having school fees paid, chauffeur-driven cars and private flights. It was supposed to be a run-of-the-mill committal hearing to a Crown Court hearing at Southern Crown Court on October the 30th, but then came high drama. The magistrates decided that she was a flight risk and that bail had to be paid. She offered £50,000. The magistrate said that wasn't enough. She added another £20,000 to that, or £70,000 in total, or $85,000. That was finally agreed, and it had to be wired to a bank account here at the Magistrates' Court. Meantime, she was held in police custody during that time. There were other bail conditions too. She has to wear a tag like a common criminal. The other bail condition was that she can't leave her London home in St John's Wood between 11 p.m. and 6 in the morning. All this, a huge humiliation surely for a woman who was feted around the world as oil minister and former president of OPEC. The allegations also say she accepted goods from high-end stores like Cartier and Louis Vuitton. The 63-year-old has been on bail since she was arrested in London in 2015. She denies corruption charges. John Cookson, Arise News at Westminster Magistrates Court.
Also, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has obtained an arrest warrant as it begins the extradition process of former Minister of Petroleum Resources Diezani Alison Madueke from the United Kingdom back to Nigeria. The EFCC wants Diezani to face 13-count charges bordering on money laundering leveled against her by the Anti-Graft Agency. The commission further revealed that the money laundering charges for which Alison Madueke is answerable to the EFCC cover jurisdictions in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, the United Kingdom, the United States of America, and Nigeria.
So, I mean, I'm not surprised about Diezani's case because there goes the kind of morality we've built in our society where people can corruptly steal from government, allegedly, and they go away with it. 8 years down the line, they have money, they can do whatever they want to do, they can post heavy bails, $70,000 bail, and the case keeps rambling on and on and on. But the shame comes back to Nigeria. So for those that argue that morality is not essential in society, they should remember the shame that comes back on Nigeria and how every other Nigerian is treated when cases like this are going up. A former petroleum minister of a country being put a tag in their hands like a common criminal, given a specific threshold. But it's not only Alison Madueke that has gone through this treatment. We all remember how a former governor had to dress like a woman and come back to the country. And we remember that a certain president in the country pardoned that same former governor. That's the kind of country we've built. But let the UK authorities have their investigation. All these allegations have been on for a while about Alison Madueke. No court has been able to dock her this allegation of bribery and a couple of other things she did. The EFCC too has been on a trail for a while. Let the court rule. And Alison Madueke, if she has a case to answer in Nigeria, she should also be able to face the Nigerian authorities. But this is the reflection of the morality in our society. And it speaks volumes. Yeah, that's the kind of society we've built. Congrats to all of us. Congratulations, Nigeria. Here you have your society.
Okay, I don't think anybody will ever argue that morality is not important in our society. I've written several essays on the distinction between what is called public morality and private morality. And it's a matter of education to be able to make that distinction. But if we extrapolate and we talk about elections, electoral jurisprudence, as I pointed out yesterday, is sui generis. The province of law is different from the social codes, ethical codes in society. After all, ethics is something that is at the center of everything, medical ethics, media ethics, and all of that. So morality is important. And we talk about high corruption, when we talk about transparency and accountability within the province of morality. So two different issues here. Now, however, in this particular case, again, I return to the point about institutions. What we have seen here is that in the UK, we keep being reminded of the value of institutions in society. That no matter what you do, no matter how long it takes, the institution will come after you with concrete evidence. And I guess that when this case takes off, it's not going to take off on the basis of sentiments. It's going to take off on the basis of hard evidence to establish certain principles under the rule of law. In Diezani Alice Madueke's case, one other lesson, I keep talking about lessons, is that, look, many of our leaders think they can leave Nigeria and relocate elsewhere. And we have seen the EFCC say, oh, if whether you go to Dubai or you go to the US or you stay in Nigeria, you know, all these jurisdictions where corruption matters are involved, they cooperate. However, it has taken the EFCC, you know, the development in the UK for the EFCC now to be asking for extradition. Although, if you look at the story says the EFCC has been collaborating with the National Crime Agency in the UK to even process, you know, the other matter in the United States by helping with evidence and all of that. So, but it is important that our own institutions also function. They don't have to be kick-started by what happens in other jurisdictions. In this particular case, Mrs. Alice Madueke's lawyer has said that she's going to plead not guilty. And the case, I guess, is going to come up again on October 30 at the Southwark Crown Court. But yesterday at the magistrate court, you know, a bail order was given to the tune of £70,000 with the instruction that she could not leave the court premises except that court bail was perfected. A curfew has been imposed on her, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m., and then also an electronic tag to be worn at all times, because the court also said, oh, she could be a possible flight risk. These are the details, you know, from that particular court of Magistrate Snow. That's the name of the magistrate. But, you know, I'm sure that there are lessons to be extrapolated from this, but we have to watch the matter as it develops. They're saying bribery to the tune of £100,000. The EFCC is talking about a 13-charge count of money laundering. But yes, we have a extradition treaty with the United Kingdom dating back to as far back as I think 1938. You know, the Extradition Act. But of course, there are processes in this regard, and the question will be, you know, paying attention to issues about double jeopardy, you know, making sure that a person cannot be tried twice for the same offense. But those are the, you know, the other details. But this is the development right now. And it may also signal a determination on the part of the Tinubu administration to address issues of corruption. But in doing so, the Tinubu administration also must avoid the error of selective, you know, intervention in this regard, which is the experience that we had under the previous administration when these cases were used to hound majorly political opponents and to fight, you know, personal battles. You know, we expect greater integrity and accountability in matters like this, even as the Tinubu administration and its agencies collaborate with agencies in foreign jurisdictions.
And we're almost out of time, but just to mention that if I pose the question to our viewers this morning, between the UK courts and the Nigerian courts, just to emphasize that important part on strengthening our institutions, who would you prefer to try cases like this, especially for Nigerians? The answer is really sad, because oftentimes we believe in the processes of courts, you know, foreign soils. Yes, I must give kudos to the FCC. There have been some high-profile cases, but again, what institutions like that have been accused of is selective justice. Because, as the popular song says, the poor man will steal something small and his face will be on EFCC pages, and a rich man will just be given a pat on the back. And that's what we often see in society. And so, this case will be following closely. You would see the way it would play out. Before they would come out, I mean, she's been in the UK now for about since 2015, and they've been gathering evidence. They won't come in and the court will throw out the case for lack of merit or lack of evidence, systematically done. I believe the EFCC is a very strong institution, and so far they've done quite well. But there's a lot more that can be done, and if they also must be exempted or free from interference by external forces like the executive, legislature, and other bodies, or even wealthy people in the nation. It's very important. And so the case has come home. Mrs. Alison Madueke must answer these questions, and it is very embarrassing. I think just going back to what you said, Rufai, about the fact that the image of Nigerians already we're trying to dry clean, if I use that word, wash our image in the on the international scene, and we've been known as a nation where corruption thrives, and this does not in any way help our story. She's not guilty. She's innocent until proven guilty. However, it's the optics. It looks really bad. Former Minister of Petroleum Resources, former president of OPEC. I mean, OPEC themselves would be like, what did we get ourselves into with this one? But until the matter is concluded, we continue to watch and see just how it will, how it will play out in the courts in the UK. But EFCC has said that they have worked with the UK authorities to, make this case come alive. And they also mentioned at some point that the UK was preventing them from extraditing Mrs. Alison Madueke to answer some of the cases she has here in Nigeria. She was looking good, by the way, because she had mentioned that she went to the UK on ill health grounds. It's great to see that she's looking better. It's now time for her to answer these questions.